So that would ensure that we would have our own bus transport when we do transfer between cities, rather than sharing with another school group. It would be another school group, not adults and not, the public, but it
Right.
would be another school group run
Sure.
through EF. So 24 would ensure us to have our own bus transport.
So assuming the demand is higher than 24, I'm assuming you would just go from like seniors and juniors first, since the, lower classmen would have an opportunity to do it the
Right,
following year.
assuming that we could do this on an every other year type of scenario, we would probably go with the seniors and juniors, especially those are the ones that are going to apply for the seal of biliteracy, and that would be, it's also, we're looking at this as a way to retain students in the upper levels, and that would be a way to pitch to them to continue on after sophomore year into level 5 and 6, possibly AP, to pursue not only the seal of biliteracy, but the possibility of taking an international trip.
Thank you.
Did you want to?
We also have more like staff that are potentially interested as well. So we can take, I believe, up to 30 or 36 students if the interest is there, because we do have the staff members that are interested in going if we have more interest.
And we do recognize with the short notice that it may be a bit of a crunch to get 24. We do recognize that as well. But prioritizing the students who would be leaving us sooner and wouldn't have the second opportunity is really important.
Right.
My question is about safety. What kind of tracking, I guess, can we do for the kids in case they decide to go for a little walk at night? And what kind of chaperoning is going to happen overnight?
Who's there?
So with the student tracking, one of the main reasons we decided to go with EF as opposed to other tour companies is because they offer specifically hotel-style accommodations and not homestays. We didn't want the students in homestays for the risk of like 2 students wandering out in the middle of the night unnoticed. The plan right now, we would be staying in the housing, like in the hotel with the students, and they will have a curfew. So they'll have a strict curfew, and we have discussed the prospect of essentially having some people on duty each night, so a rotating duty schedule, to make sure that people are staying where they need to be. Now, we've also talked to other schools about that, and one of the schools that we talked to, she puts like Scotch tape on the door, just a little piece of Scotch tape on the door to make sure that that Scotch tape does not get ripped overnight, because the kids have their own bathroom and there's no need for them to leave. So that is the way that another school is handling it. Obviously, that comes with its own set of curiosities, but I do think it's a strategy, and it is one that has been proposed to us as like valid. In terms of safety otherwise, because the program is extremely self-contained, there is not a lot of free time where the students are not involved in something. They don't have a lot of wandering around time. The very limited time that they have is, maybe an hour where we're all in the same plaza and they can go get ice cream, but they're in sight. Like they're not wandering off down random streets, so it's very, very structured. So.
Can I ask a couple questions? Is there a report or project that's the culmination of the experience so that they would get the 3 credits for a college?
So we had thought about, we started brainstorming the academic portion of it, the before, the during, and the after type of meetings or journaling and that type of collecting of assignments from students. Do you want to talk about the credits? Okay.
So there is the option of college credit, which is technically an optional part of the program. We would want students to do that. However, it's not technically mandatory. With that, they would be doing a research project as part of their time there. That would end up being submitted through EF because they're connected with the university, and the college credits come through that university. So while we would be there to mentor that process and guide through that process, the students would be responsible for submitting that research project. And it doesn't have to be done by the time they leave. I believe they said it was like a month after that they had to have the project submitted. So, and it should build on the experiences that they had while they were abroad.
So is that a 3 credits, or is that accepted by most colleges, or is it just one college?
That is my understanding. It's a transferable college credit. So it would transfer most likely as an elective credit to a lot of colleges or into a world language credit.
And do you have any plans, like you said, there might be plans for fundraising? Because I think while it's a great experience, some people may not be able to pay for that.
Absolutely. It is expensive. These trips are not, they are not super cheap, which we understand. There are a couple options that are built into the program. So each student gets essentially a fundraising page that they can push out to their social media, they can push out to family, to send out to, grandma and to, Aunt Sally, who might be willing to contribute to this as part of their graduation present or something to that effect. We have also looked at some fundraising to do like in-house for like the whole group to reduce the cost overall and then redistribute that money out. We are evaluating options for that. Those type of things tend to not be, they would not make a huge dent in the overall cost for every student, but it could reduce the cost by maybe a little chunk for the whole group, so.
And I know you explained a little bit about a curfew. So is that curfew at all, like they're on their own, that they would be able to leave for like so many hours?
No, so I believe the curfew is 9 PM, and it is a firm curfew. They are not leaving the hotel after 9 PM.
So before 9 PM, are they allowed to wander by themselves, or do they have an adult with them?
They would have adults with them. So the only time that they have sort of to themselves is these sort of plaza hours that are sometimes between like lunch and the afternoon activity, where we would all be in a central plaza that has, coffee shops and ice cream stores, maybe a record shop or something where they can be browsing. But that's really the only time that they have that's like not wrapped up in an activity. They keep these kids extraordinarily busy during these events. Part of that is making sure they're not getting in trouble, and part of that is making sure they're getting their money's worth for this experience, because it's certainly an expense, so.
And one last question, does one person hold all the passports, or do they hold a passport for themselves each day?
That I don't know, but I can find out. I don't think it would be ill-advised for a central person to be maintaining that, because high schoolers, are maybe not the most responsible when it comes to keeping up with their items. And that could be a discussion for us to have, certainly. The hotel does have safes in the rooms, so, and as the chaperones will have a separate space, that might be a very
Thank you.
solid idea to consider.
Great, thank you.
Who bears the cost of the chaperones?
I think the chaperones are included, one per 6 student. Right. Correct.
The tour has access to medical care or,
Yes, the tour does have access to medical care. There's a 24/7 support liaison that we're connected with that will be able to get us to either like medical clinics, sort of a minute clinic type scenario, depending on the severity of the issue, all the way up through ER and trauma care, were that to be an issue at all. There are how do I want to say this? The cost that we have proposed here includes the advanced medical and like emergency coverage. We elected to include the higher level of insurance due to parental concerns and community concerns about wanting to make sure these kids are safe. We also want these kids to be safe. So yes, this does include the cost of medical insurance while those students are in the country, and it does cover the cost of those medical care. And if a student were to needed to be like medevaced somewhere, that is also like part of this. That would be very unlikely. We will be in major cities. So, and also, let's hope not, but.
So do the parents essentially commit to funding the balance of whatever's not fundraised?
Correct.
Could I request that the group look into scholarship opportunities or subsidies for students who may not be able to have that opportunity to have their parents?
Absolutely, and there are other groups within the school. I know the music department takes expensive trips where they do offer some fundraising. That's something that we could absolutely lean on our colleagues for some more information and find out, what they do as well.
EF Tours, the company we are proposing to use, does have a scholarship program that students can apply for that does defer part of the cost, although it is not the full cost. And I don't know the exact quantity or like what they pay exactly, but I do know that that is something that they can apply for.
Does EF Tours offer any financing? Like installment
do.
financing? Because
Yes.
it's such a large organization.
There are essentially 3 payment models that EF Tours offers. So they offer one option that is essentially just pay up front. And for some families, that may be what they choose to do. There's also one where they pay monthly, and I believe it divides it out month by month, and they pay that installment. And then there's one where they sort of pay a deposit, and then they pay half, and then they pay the second half. So there's three installment models. And those are dependent on the family's choice, so.
And I didn't see the agenda, but I'm assuming there's no free time, right?
No.
Everyone's scheduled for the
Yes,
day.
yes.
So
So a
students can't
typical day is
wander.
breakfast with the hotel or breakfast in where, the housing will be. So the hotel's breakfast. Then they would go to class. The class is several hours long. There is a short break where they get to, like go get water, take a little breather, whatever. And then after the class, they typically have lunch. We'll have one of those little plaza hours in between the activity and lunch. And then the afternoon activity takes a solid chunk of time. Some of those are 3-hour things, some of them are 4-hour things. And then they do dinner. And then there's usually a small plaza time in the afternoon or evening before the students are curfewed, and then they are 9 p.m. in the curfew. So their days are extremely structured.
Yeah.
And then travel days are even more structured. So when we would be traveling from Madrid to Toledo, those days are even more structured because of the bus times. So their days are very, very regimented.
Yep, good.
Hi. I just wanted to mention the pricing, while it may be a chunk, having planned a trip in 2021, that's a pretty good price. So kudos to you on that, and for your hard work on this. One of the things that I looked at today was EF Tours, because the first comments said there were a lot of pluses, but there were some negatives. But in looking at them for school groups, actually, some of the negatives were positives. They talked to positives we've brought up, and you mentioned the idea of their comprehensive planning, that their tour guides were extremely knowledgeable. The focus was on education, and one of the complaints was there was too little free time, which I saw as a strength. But also, one of the negatives, which again, I'm not so sure it's a negative, is that the accommodations are not in the downtown city areas, which some people didn't like, but I would assume as a chaperone, I would want them in a more controlled environment. So all those things really kind of calmed my concern on that. I do think, as a former teacher with trips, that span of 14, 15 to 18 is one that would give me a little bit of pause. But again, I admire the work that you've done up to this point.
Thank you. I know you want to mention that too. And we spent a bunch of time looking at the different options of stays. As a parent myself, I said, I wouldn't want my child in a homestay. That's for a study abroad for a university student. I want my child in a hotel. I personally want to be in a hotel and not at a homestay. So those were things that we did consider very closely, because there are all different types of places out there. Dorms were an option, and we definitely, passed on that one for the same reason. Did you want to expand on that?
Interestingly, one of the programs we eliminated was one that offered Center City hotel accommodations, and that was one of the reasons we eliminated them, because we felt like it would be a bit too much of a draw for some of our students who would feel that compulsion to try to sneak out a little bit more if you're in the city center. Those programs are also significantly more expensive, by orders of 1,000 or more per student. So they are much more expensive to stay that way. These accommodations are still quite nice, but they are outside of the city center, which does provide that controlled environment you mentioned.
Just one other notation of people who have used the tour packages was the out-of-pocket costs in the country. So it's one to consider.
Yes. There is guidance from EF that will be talked about during the parent meeting about essentially like pocket money and what the students can expect to spend a day. Most of their meals are included. The things that they would be spending money on obviously would not be the events or the excursions, because that is all included in the fee that is listed there. But it would include, getting the ice cream, grabbing souvenirs, purchasing that morning coffee, because the coffee in Spain is just so good. Let's be honest. But those type of expenses are something that is laid out during the parent meeting, because the documentation is provided for the parents in that respect.
So would it be more more than dinner each day?
No, it's usually one meal a day that's
One meal,
not
that's what I
included.
thought.
Whether they're getting breakfast and dinner one day and lunch and dinner another day, it does vary a little bit, just depending on the daily schedule. But they are provided 2 meals a day that does sort of vary per day.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
I just have one out of curiosity. The cities that you plan to go to, do they primarily speak Castilian, and do you instruct in that? Or would it be
Yes.
kind of a first exposure for some of these? Because I went through the AP and everything, and we never spoke in that dialect.
Right, no, so we are all teaching Castellano, and that's what is primarily spoken in Madrid and Toledo. Barcelona, they will speak that as well, but they also have Catalan, which we do talk about in our class. We don't converse in that language, but it'll be a great eye-opening experience for the students to see that other dialect that we have provided them information about. And a lot of our students study abroad in Barcelona. So when they get there and realize, wow, I better pick up this other dialect, this is a great experience for them. And that's something that we're touting, is this idea of global citizenship, of really getting out there and seeing a huge majority of our students study abroad, whether it's in Spain or Italy or France, different places. This is going to give them that impetus to want to take the next step in the university or backpack or travel. And this is what we're teaching them in our classrooms. These are the things, the slideshows, the YouTube videos, the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, to actually get there and see that in real life, or to see the artwork, right? And it's on such a different level, and I can speak from personal experience. When I first got there, I nearly cried. I was that Spanish student, I had to get there. And when I finally got there and was able to buy that cup of coffee and really get on the train and see the schedule in Spanish, it's not like when your parents take you to Cancun on spring break. This is Spain. It's the real deal. It's really cool. And then after that, I went to study abroad. I ended up back here teaching Spanish. It really was a very impactful experience in my life, and I hope to be able to impart that on my children eventually, on your children and our community. It was really just an amazing experience, and to have a team here that's equally as passionate and spent hours. She basically works for EF at this point. She is so organized. Her spreadsheets are color-coded, but this has been fun. This has been a really fun process, working through this, mulling over the ideas, deciding where we want to stay, where do we want to go, what's going to be the most beneficial for our students. And we're really proud to bring, after due diligence, really what we think is the best-case scenario and the best option for our community. So thank you for hearing us out and for your consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your work on bringing this opportunity for our students. Our next agenda item will be item C, comprehensive plan presentation by Dr. Heinrich.
Thank you all. They have put in a tremendous amount of work. We got to meet with them, and I compliment you, because I would love to go to Spain, but going to Spain and dragging a bunch of teenagers who are other people's children with you is a whole different experience, and so kudos to you. Adona, Mr. Cole said I should have you do all my presentations because you're so entertaining, so I'm going to try to be halfway as entertaining and as quick as Adona. Our draft comprehensive plan has been posted on the board's website for feedback for the last month. Most of you know this because you've been intimately involved in the meetings. You've been with us the whole way. We appreciate that. Why do we have comprehensive planning? Well, and let me say this first. Thank you so much to the board and the district, because I carry this around with me all the time, but the strategic plan was so well done that it made it really easy for our steering committee and our administrative team to set goals for the comprehensive plan. Again, the comprehensive plan is required by the state. The strategic plan is a bonus, and it's a better plan, but that not everybody does. But because we did, our transition to the comprehensive plan was really seamless and smooth. We want to have all of our stakeholders' perspectives involved and get everyone on the same page. It is a big picture plan, and then we chunk those goals down into pieces that we can manage. It happens every 3 years, and there are pieces that have to be included every 6 years. They're all there. I want to thank the steering committee. It was community members, lots of students, lots of teachers, board members, administrators. Everyone was so positive, so engaged. You know how you know when it's a good meeting? When it goes from 5 to 7, and at 5 minutes to 7, everyone's not getting up and pushing their chairs in. That's when you know people are really engaged, and that's how it was every time. So well done to our team. So again, we used the strategic plan to determine the mission and vision that was written for the district through the strategic plan to determine our next steps for comprehensive plan. You know the mission and vision because you wrote it. We have our strategic plan priorities that direct everything that we do. And we reviewed a ton of data, PSSAs, Keystones, AP, SAT, ACT, attendance, graduation rate, PVAS, ELD growth, and NOCD, which is our industry-based learning through the CTE, through EDCAT, to figure out where are kids strong and where do we need to move. So this is our priorities and goals. Priority 1 is to develop a robust MTSS process, which you've heard us talk about for months. The goal is to give teachers the data and the ability to target individual students for remediation, for rehearsal, and for enrichment. And we've been talking about that data for months that tells us we're doing a really good job here and we need to push and grow and challenge here. Our second priority that really aligns well with the strategic plan is to continue to align our English language arts and our STEM curriculum to make sure that our students are making the appropriate growth in both reading and writing and in their science and math. So priority 1, we have a goal, 85% of students who've been enrolled for a full academic year will exceed 1 year of growth as measured by benchmarks, and the goal is required by the state. In order to do that, we need to be clear in articulating roles and responsibilities, making sure we have the right interventions and enrichment in place, and coming up with the protocols that will help us to really target student individual needs and embrace a culture of continuous improvement. Data-driven problem-solving approach. We need to really analyze what interventions and enrichments we have, and then identify additional resources if needed. Our second priority is the alignment of the ELA and STEM curriculum. The goals are, by the end of the comprehensive plan, 80% of third graders will be reading on or above grade level. And by the end of the comprehensive plan, we will increase the number of high school students who engage in STEM by 10%. That goal actually comes right from the strategic plan, and the strategic plan says we need to increase opportunities for authentic STEM experiences K-8, and then look at the high school program of studies to see what courses our students will then be prepared for. Our actions are to identify research-based platforms that allow us to collect the data. We're going to talk about that some more tonight, and we talked about it last month. Giving our teachers the skills to really differentiate for students based on that data. Optimizing our K-8 STEM offerings and auditing the high school course offerings in the program of study to maximize student opportunities for STEM courses and pathways. So how do we do it? Professional development. The more we grow our teachers and our staff, the better experiences our kids have. We'll train them in a comprehensive data analysis protocol. We'll give them professional development about what and how we implement MTSS. We'll give our elementary teachers more training in structured literacy. And we'll continue to provide training in differentiation and technology so that we can meet all students where they are. There's also a list of like 753 PD things that the state requires, so they're there. I'm sure by the time I come up here again, there'll be 3 more added, but we'll make sure we do them. How do we determine if our professional development is effective? We survey our teachers every year. We get input from district and building administrators based on observations, walkthroughs, student achievement data, and how well our progress is aligned to our goals. And then we also have an Act 48 committee that meets several times a year to say, all right, here's what we've done, here's what teachers are saying, here's what we need to do next. We are required to have an induction plan for our staff, and we do have one, and it's been updated to make sure that we're providing teachers, A, with what the state requires, minimum, but B, what do they need to be successful at Lower Moreland, and what do Lower Moreland kids need from their staff? And so between Mr. Cole and myself and our coaches, we have a really good program there. So what are our next steps? The plan is presented to the board for approval tonight for information. If we are satisfied with this plan, then the board in 2 weeks would approve it. At that point, it would be submitted to the Pennsylvania Department of Education for approval, and we will implement the plan. You will be happy to know that I also included 752 data slides that you've already seen that I'm not going to review, but I put them there because if someone at home or someone who hasn't been through those presentations wants to look at the data for the district or what to review, it's there for us. I know many of you were very involved in this, but do you have any questions?
I have a question concerning the STEM. Is STEM, because it's going to be under the PSSAs, is that taught through the classroom teacher, or is that taught through a specials teacher?
That's a great question. So STEELS is the new curriculum, and it will be PSSA science, grade 5, grade 8, and then biology. We have STEELS standards. We're working on, and actually we're ahead of the state, but we've been working on realigning our science standards so that science, technology, environmental, engineering, blah, 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 is all in there. We also have STEM teachers at each building who are like an encore, a special. Sometimes they're doing robots, and sometimes they're making a Google slideshow, and sometimes they are, building a maze. So it's a combination. It's done in math, it's done in science, and it's done in their encore classes. At the high school, then, there are particular courses, and we want to increase those.
So if it were taught through a specials teacher, I guess they would do the hands-on, I suppose, something like that, a project-based. What happens when the child's absent on those days? How do they make up that experience?
So I was in a STEM class in 3rd grade a couple weeks ago. I'm lying, it was 4th grade, I'm sorry. I was in a 4th grade class. There was a student who was absent. Once the teacher gave direction, she then went and worked individually with that student. The same way if your 3rd grader missed a math class, you would catch them up the next day. Now, they might only go once or twice during a rotation, but that means they don't have as much to make up. The other thing is, we're not teaching anything once, right? So when I was there, they were creating a PowerPoint about, not a PowerPoint, what's it called? Google slideshow.
Slides.
Google slideshow, thank you. That's my old brain. About animals, and each one was given an animal, but she had done one for them, then they had done one from a card that she gave them, then she allowed them to find their own facts about an animal that they liked. So similar to anything else, if you're absent, you get caught up over time and you see the same skill multiple times.
Yeah, I would just have concerns that, like, if somebody's out and they have the flu and they miss classes, you're going to prioritize math and you're going to prioritize your reading, and that may not be a priority, even though that's going to be tied to the PSSAs. And that's a concern I have with just how, in general, I think it's taught in most schools.
So I feel really confident, based on the work that we're doing, that the STEELS standards that are on the test are being taught in our science, in our math classes. The STEM elective supports that and reinforces it, but the STEM classes choose standards that align well, but our science and math teachers, all of their work is aligned to those standards. And so remember, if they take a science PSSA in 5th grade, they've had science and math K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that STEM elective for years. It's not like it changes in 6 months.
I do think it's more specific to each grade, because I know when I see that, if I know it's not taught in third, I'll have to put that in and interject it into fourth grade curriculum. I just worry that if a child's out, that they do somehow miss that experience.
Yeah.
And I think this is how it's probably taught throughout Pennsylvania, it's going to be. But I do have a concern that they may not get that full experience because it's taught on a rotational basis. And if they miss that, I think the priority is always to get to the major subjects first.
Sure.
So that was just something just to keep in mind. Is there going to be I guess project-based assessments that they're going to use to see if they've covered those specific skills in that particular unit?
Yeah, so part of making sure our curriculum is well aligned is looking at the standards, looking at the resources we have, and looking at the assessments. So yes, that's a critical part of doing it right.
And then we could see, if the child needs something, we could either reteach it or to review it.
Exactly.
All right, thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm glad a lot of our committee discussions centered around professional development. As you point out, I think it's really important that we invest in our teachers. Is there any data to suggest a relationship between professional development and teacher retention or teacher competitiveness for recruitment?
It's a really good point. I don't have it off the top of my head, but there is data that I can get for you. Teachers don't leave or come for money. They stay when they feel valued, when they feel like they are growing, and when they feel like they matter and they're invested in. And so I appreciate your perspective, and I've heard that consistently from this team. We are committed to growing our teachers because they are the most important people in this district for our students, not us. It's not the administration. It's not the central office. It's not even the principals. It is the teachers who are in the classroom with the kids. So I can look for some data to share with you, but I will say there is data about teacher retention is really related to feeling valued and that their work is meaningful. Thank you. That's a really good point.
Thanks. Are there questions for Dr. Henry?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Our next presentation will be from Mr. Cole on the data warehouse recommendation.
Dr. Lee, before I start, that's actually the topic of my dissertation, so I would be happy to share some resources with you. If you want about 400, they'll be in your inbox shortly. This is actually kind of a really great segue. So one of the tenets of the comp plan, which is built very much on a foundation of our strategic plan, is developing a K-12 MTSS system in Lower Moreland. It's something that we feel we really need to do to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. And one of the really essential components to that is identifying a partner that would provide a data warehouse for the district. So tonight I would like to talk to you about our recommendation for a data warehouse project. Before we begin, this conversation started quite a while ago. I actually think I might have been clean-shaven when we started this conversation. So you probably recall back in October, early on into my tenure in this position, we began talking about this need. So I thought it would make sense for us to start with a little bit of a review of where we are and where we started. So again, in order to support the design, launch, and implementation of an effective multi-tier system of supports, or an MTSS system, the district has recognized that we need to partner with a really robust data warehouse tool that is able to really provide in-the-moment data to our administrative and instructional staff in order to support decision-making about what students need in the moment. Just as a real quick overview, and I promise I won't bore you too much with this, an MTSS system, or a multi-tier systems of support, is a school-wide approach that uses information about students to make sure that each student is provided with the level of support that they need in the moment at that time in that subject area. Some of the core tenets of that are robust screening, which we have mostly in place in the district currently, and have planned to next year to have a really robust screening process in place. Another part of that is a multi-level prevention system or a multi-level intervention system. So essentially, you have the ability to offer students that maybe need a little bit more support, whether that's remediation support or, as our data has shown consistently, students that are performing very well that need some enrichment support. You need to have a system in place that can provide different levels of support to those students when they need that. You additionally need to have progress monitoring. So when you design an intervention or an enrichment for a student, you want to make sure that you are monitoring how that student is doing in that system to ensure that they are continuing to have their needs met. And then you also want a tool that really enables you to do robust data-based decision-making. So as you can see, all woven all throughout all of those core tenets is the need for a system that allows us to monitor and respond to data effectively. So when we started this process, we identified 6 core areas that we were really looking for a partner that would allow us to improve our ability to focus on these areas. One is we wanted a partner that was comprehensive. So we wanted something that allowed us to have all comprehensive data warehousing and analytics in one platform. We didn't want to be having to switch back and forth between platforms or using one platform for certain aspects of our workflow and then another platform for others. We also wanted to partner with a proven track record of supporting implementation. Something that we really value in Lower Moreland, and we've talked about it just recently, is professional development. And we wanted somebody that was going to offer a real rich and ongoing professional development relationship with our administrators and our instructional staff. We really wanted a high-quality dashboard. That's something that our teachers and our administrators were very clear about wanting and desiring. Mr. Geiger and I were talking about this before the meeting. The concept of being able to quickly sit at your desk, pull up a single screen, and be able to say, this is how my class is doing, this is how my group of students is doing, this is how my school is doing, this is how my district is doing, is an invaluable tool for educators as they make their daily decisions. We also wanted somebody that would offer data quality support. You know, we've been really fortunate in our district that we have an absolutely excellent data manager, and she does an excellent job of keeping our data high quality, but we want to make sure that that remains true. You know, when you are building a system off real student data that you're analyzing in real time, you want that data to be of the utmost quality. So we wanted a partner that really had some systems in place to help ensure that. We also wanted one that would help us with intervention management. One of the things that we have done very well historically in the district, we wanted to make sure we maintain that, is we've done an excellent job of matching students to interventions that they need, and we want to make sure that the systems in place to manage that, which can be a complicated process, were robust and easy to use and accessible for all members of the school community. We also wanted to make sure that we had a really streamlined integration. We wanted a platform that would allow us to take many disparate data points and pull it into one platform, but we also wanted it to happen seamlessly. We didn't want to have to be adjusting or constantly reaching out to partners and saying, oh, well, we need you to tweak this report so that it can run into this system. We wanted something to be essentially turnkey. So, with all of those in mind, this is the process that we embarked on. So, in October, you'll recall, we issued an RFP. We did identify 7 vendors that we talked to folks in the region and across the profession and identified 7 partners that we thought would be a really good match for the district. All but one of those vendors did engage with the district to some extent, ranging from kicking the tires to a full presentation sent to us. Ultimately, we ended up with 4 presentations. Several of those vendors, after looking at the scope and asking a couple questions, did determine that they didn't meet our needs and weren't able to offer as robust a system as we wanted. So what we did was we took those 4 formal submissions that we received, and then we ran them through our rubric, which had been included within our RFP. We evaluated those proposals as a team with administrators and teachers, and we identified 2 partners that really rose clearly above the other 2. We invited those partners in for an in-person presentation, and then after that, all of the members of the team that were at that presentation met and debriefed and identified a partner that we really had significant interest in partnering with. What we then did as a district was we invited that partner in and had them meet with some of our school buildings just to be able to make sure that they were able to address all of our questions, make sure that they were able to work. And what we've also done, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, is we've ensured that all of our partners that we would want integrated into that system are able to be integrated into that system so that we know we are going to have a true one-stop shop where all of our student information will live in that system. All that to say, the partner that we're recommending moving forward with this evening is Panorama Education. I just wanted to point out a couple of the highlights that our team found when we were evaluating this proposal. One thing that we really enjoyed was a very holistic view. So it takes, it integrates with over 20 student information systems, 100 assessment, LMS, and behavior systems, all natively integrate with Panorama, and they already have those connections built. So every program that we currently utilize is able to be integrated into Panorama seamlessly and natively. The one exception initially that we'll talk about later this evening was our student information system did not inherently interface, but we'll talk a little bit about that later this evening. Another thing that we really liked about Panorama, and I think probably the greatest differentiator of Panorama when compared to other products, is it really presents a very holistic picture of the student, all in one kind of one-stop shop. So it provides academic, behavioral, attendance, and social and emotional information about our students, all kind of in one all-encompassing dashboard for a classroom teacher, a building principal, or a district administrator. So you can truly pull up one page and say, how is this student doing? And have a really good snapshot of what that student does. Now, does that replace teacher knowledge? Absolutely not. But in a quick snapshot to help make some decisions, it's a really powerful tool. Another thing that it really does, and something that I think has impressed our administrators in particular, is it actually really helps you uncover some hidden trends that you may have missed. And I think when you're able to look at student information in the aggregate, but also being able to really quickly and seamlessly disaggregate that data, you start to find trends that, oh, a student that fits this profile seems to be struggling in this particular area. That's insight that we historically have struggled to find, and it happens very seamlessly with the Panorama tool. Another, and again, as I alluded to earlier, user-friendly dashboards were a very significant ask, and the Panorama dashboards are great. They're very quick, they're very concise, with the ability to drill down into significant depth, but also the ability to very quickly ascertain how a group of students is performing. Another thing that we really liked was targeted interventions. It has a really nice intervention workflow that's built into the system, and it allows for seamless communication between teachers, administrators, administrator to administrator, and all of that data lives within that system, which is even more important as we enter a district with 4 buildings with an additional transition built into that. It's nice to know that we will have a system now where all of that student information will live and seamlessly go with them across the K-12 experience. It also provides, while Panorama will allow us to build our own intervention library into the system, it does come with a built-in set of interventions that they've pre-identified as evidence-based that are built into that system that are available to us, as well as any of our kind of homegrown interventions that we've shown success with previously. And then lastly is just that idea of collaboration and the idea that we're able to sit down with a group of educators in a room and be on the same page instantly with the same information about that student and allow us to make really thoughtful decisions in the moment. So just kind of a really quick snapshot of what the Panorama system is. And I know I've provided some background matter to the board, and I'm sure many of you have viewed this already. But really kind of the Panorama way is to unify student data, to give you all of the information you need about a student, to then allow you to take action through an intervention management system that is easy to use, transparent, and allows for optimum data sharing as well as tracking of student performance that then drives those outcomes. And if you look at that last slide, that gives you an idea of visually what a dashboard might look like in Panorama, and you can see if I'm a classroom teacher sitting down at my desk in the morning and pulling that up, I see 30% of my students are above grade level in academics, 1% is on grade level, and there's 22% of students at I want to make sure that I focus on, and 30% that I really want to make sure I focus on, and that happens instantly. So that's a really powerful tool. Panorama, also something that really stuck out to me as a little bit of a data nerd, is the only platform that I was able to uncover that has an ESSA level rating of moderate across K-12, which is a pretty high standard of an evidence-based approach. There are other systems that may have that certification for certain bands of students, but they have that certification K-12. An independent study last year actually showed a 6% increase in districts that utilized them in reading and an 8% increase in math. So there's some solid research basis to the product. So our plan for launching as we quickly close winter, our goal will be to start product implementation. So the team from Panorama and LMTSD will continue to navigate that and make sure we get our system up and running. Some of this work has been happening to the extent that it can in the background. They're certainly prepared to go forward pending approval. But then what we would like to do is use the platform in the spring to do a culture and climate survey. We've started some work preparing that as well, so we'll be able to survey staff, students, and our families to get an idea of how the culture and climate is in Lower Moreland. And then late spring, we'll do some core user training. Some of the central admin, the Office of Teaching and Learning, Mr. Giordano's office, some of those folks that will be interfacing with the system early. And then knowing early summer, once our building level administrators don't have a couple hundred students in the building, we'll be able to start training them, and then full district rollout late summer, early fall, going into the next year. Just a quick overview. I included this just to kind of give you a rough idea. I know the actual agreement will be coming up later in the evening. But the overall cost for starting this school year from March 25 to June 28 is listed there. It works out to an average of about $43,000 a year. Our current product is about $26,000 a year, so this would replace that, just to kind of give you an idea of the cost. It's very much in line with the other products that we looked at of a similar capacity. I think some of the things that really differentiated Panorama in our eyes are, one, the surveys. The Panorama surveys are kind of industry standard, and in and of themselves are a product that are very sought out. The Solera, which is their AI integration, has some really powerful tools to help support our administrators as we make decisions about how to best survey children. I also was, support children. I was also really pleased with their training by going with Panorama. Their approach to training on the platform is really great, and it's not a simple nuts and bolts, here's how you do A, B, C. It's really, they provide a lot of robust training in the MTSS model and then show you the tools within Panorama that are able to support the model, which is a great approach. So, any questions?
I have a question concerning, could you just touch on the AI chat application, how that could be incorporated?
Sure. So that is it's a tool that has a couple different uses depending which user is using it. So for a classroom teacher, it's a really nice kind of walled garden AI system, so it's not one that goes out to the internet and pulls a lot of information, but it can really help with lesson planning that has a really robust kind of knowledge base about standards and lessons. So if I'm a classroom teacher and I can say, hey, I have a group of students in my class that are showing that they need some remediation in multiplication, it can suggest some lesson plans. At the administrative user level, it has some really neat, and they showed some functionality where it can be, you can set some parameters and say, hey, show me some students that are doing well academically, but have some social and emotional concerns that I should keep an eye on that maybe are slipping between the cracks. And it can kind of say, hey, you should probably take a look at these students. And again, it's not the be-all, end-all, but it's a great starting point. And one of the things I love about Panorama is just that. It does a great job of capturing kids that might slip through the cracks, and they utilize their AI component to really help in that regard.
It sounds like it's pretty user-friendly.
Extremely user-friendly, yeah.
Thank you.
We did, they provided, I want to say 10 districts in Pennsylvania. They work with over 2,000 districts nationwide. Pennsylvania doesn't have a huge footprint, but I reached out to all of the districts that they currently partner with, and I would say probably on the low end of response was, yeah, it's a really good tool that does exactly what we need it to. On the really positive end, there were districts that shared that it's completely transformed how they do MTSS and how they do data warehousing.
If they provide like a lesson plan, do they also provide worksheets for that? If there's a library for that?
Yeah, they do. It's it varies on the amount per standard, but yeah, they do. They provide. It can really be a one-stop shop. It was something that a lot of, particularly our teachers that were on the committee, really were like, "Oh, that's exciting."
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have several questions. So will data from our current product transfer into this?
Yes, yes. So it will transfer in. One of the things that, and again, we're very fortunate to have our data quality office and our data quality person because she owns a lot of that already. So, but yes, this will all transfer. We own all of that data that's in our current platform.
Are the fees that we're expecting, so I understand that they're set for the next 4 years, but so let's say we're starting with like a first grader and they're going to build, like the storage for that person will eventually be more. Will there be any expected future storage fees for like larger?
No, they don't have any kind of built-in annual. I imagine that, like any product, there'll be annual increases as you negotiate new agreements, but no kind of rolling natural built-in increases have been negotiated.
Is there like an informal aspect for teachers, like logging notes or logging parent communication?
There is. That's an area that we've explored with them, and that I think they're very open to expanding. It's not as robust as some of their other features, and they were very transparent about that. It's certainly something that we could do. The other thing that's worth noting is unique to our relationship with Panorama. It is going to truly fully integrate with our student information system. So anything that we house in our student information system can get into Panorama, which has not always been the case with our current partnership.
Gotcha. So if you're like in an MTSS meeting and you pull it up and you say, like, when's the last time you talked to the parent, right? They could, what do we have?
Yes.
Infinite
Yeah.
Campus?
We have eSchool.
eSchool. Mhm.
Now that is part of the intervention process. That does natively live in Panorama. So that is something that is already built into their system.
But to your point, that is where the notes will be made about the length of the intervention, what's been tried in the past, what parents have been communicated with. That would all go there for the team to be able to review.
And then the real benefit, again, in a 4-district environment is that just goes with the student. So that if I'm receiving that student at the middle school, I have that at the drop of a hat, and that information lives
Like you can
on.
see what happened in kindergarten?
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. Is there a parent interface, or this is solely internal?
No, this is really just meant for administrative and instructional staff. There's a survey component that is administered to parents, but it's not like a Canvas where there's a teacher dashboard or a teacher login.
Okay, one more. So as far as teacher expectations for logging, like assessments, I understand if it's an online assessment, it'll probably sync up automatically. But if there's paper assessments, they would be expected to upload them?
So one of the things that Panorama does integrate with is gradebook. So the gradebook that we utilize would be the mechanism that would record that, so that student grades, their course grades, are integrated into that system ongoing and updated in perpetuity.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Cole, the culture and climate survey that goes out early on in the process, is that going to students? And is
So-
that the data we want, like the student collection of
Sure,
how they
so-
feel about the school and?
It is going out to students. It would go out, there's one for students, there's one for staff, and there's one for parents. Now, that is different than the data, the social and emotional data that would live in the system. That's a different survey. We're not administering that this year. Our goal would be to administer that next year. So this is just an opportunity for us to seek feedback on how the schools are doing from those 3 stakeholder groups.
And the parents are going to specifically, the answers are going to go to that student.
No, they're not tied to that
They're
student.
not?
No, they're tied to the building and the district, so we're able to analyze it from that, but it's not necessarily tied to the student.
Not the
Social
family.
emotional survey, which will be administered next year, that is tied to the student.
And the student survey is not tied to the student?
No.
Him or herself,
Yeah.
okay. All
No,
right.
which is why we're able to do it so quickly once we have the system up and running, because it doesn't necessarily need to be tied. What we'll need directory information for emails to send it to
Right.
people, so we'll have to get that into the system, but,
And this is a tool completely for internal use only?
correct.
Like, we're not going to give parents a login to?
Nope, this
any of
is an
Okay.
internal.
All right, thank you.
So I just was asking Camille if her district had something like this, and she said they did, but, so could a teacher pull up information about the student, or is it simply for the MTSS team?
No, the teachers will have access to the full dashboard as well for all students. for
Okay,
their
so like when
students.
they get their roster in the beginning of the
Yep.
year, they'll check
Yep.
it? Okay.
I think my question you just answered, but a rudimentary summary is it's a very comprehensive student file
Correct.
in terms of their learning
Yep.
habits. And
Yep,
we-
correct.
so in terms of access, you said only teachers that have those students?
Yep.
So it's not open to anybody?
Yeah,
just
so
in terms of privacy concerns and others?
a teacher would have their rostered students, administrators would have access to the building, and then once a student transitions to a new building and a new teacher, that access would slide with them. And all of that is built within our SIS, so our student information system starts to dictate who has access to what.
And Encore teachers or,
Yeah, they would have a broader access as
okay.
well.
I assume teachers who are on the MTSS committee also have a greater
Yeah,
range.
yep, absolutely.
How does it, I guess, for any of our students that are being placed outside of the district, how are we keeping track of that information?
Yeah, so we would depend, so again, all of those systems for like state assessments and many of those iReadies and those platforms we use, that student would still be tied. Anything that lives in our student information system would also be tied, so we'd probably have to address, I'm thinking of some students that may be in an alternate placement outside of district, we would have to figure out how to
Manual
best.
input,
Yeah,
a lot of that stuff.
And there is a process for manual input, it's not optimal, but it's something that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, typically when a student is in and out of district placement, their data is housed at the placement, and then we get what we need for the IEP. So they wouldn't necessarily be drawn into this portal for those purposes.
Did any of the companies that you evaluated offer a parent-facing dashboard?
Pausing, I'm trying to think. I believe there was one that did, but I don't recall it being of any quality to
not
note.
a common offering,
Yeah, it's
okay.
not a common offering. That tends to be your learning management system or your student information system that tends to be student-facing. I think the theory behind it is giving as few people access to such a large amount of student data as possible. Even if it's a gated parent access, still more users equals more potential for nefarious purposes.
Could this, however, because obviously a lot of us are parents, we're curious about how our kid is doing year to year. No, we can't, the parent can't access it, but could this be a tool with parent-teacher conferences?
Absolutely, yeah. So I can speak to, so one of the districts in Pennsylvania that uses this platform is my child's school district. So one of the pieces of feedback was cornering my superintendent and saying, hey, come here, can you talk to me about this? So I can tell you that at parent-teacher conferences, absolutely, this is a platform that is utilized as we kind of talk through our student progress and pulling the dashboard up, absolutely.
My question is about, next question is about support. Is there going to be master users in each of the buildings so that if someone has a question, they can?
Yeah,
just
there's
ask them?
definitely, as we start to develop the capacity, I do think one of the real benefits is the ease of use is going to be so profoundly different than what our teachers are used to that it will absolutely be really helpful. But yeah, we will certainly make sure that we have some core folks at each building that are really conversant. We also opted for, and I don't specifically call it out, but incumbent in this agreement is we kind of opted for the Cadillac package. So we have a really high level of support, including access to unlimited online support as well as in-person training.
Okay, so there's like chats if the teachers have immediate questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say, now obviously, I say this this. They're currently trying to sell us a product, but thus far, their responsiveness has been absolutely phenomenal. And all of the districts I was able to discuss with. Matter of fact, one of the districts said that their favorite component to it was the support and how quick and responsive the support team has been.
Thank you.
Have
Any
we
other?
just- Just one quick one. Have we identified, for example, for academics, what we want in there so that it's apples to apples?
Yes, so we have identified definitely the non-negotiables. We're currently in the process of working with our teams to make sure that there's not anything we're missing, so to speak. But yeah, we've identified some of those big core ones. Certainly the iReadies and the PSSAs and the like, you know, those kind of natural ones, and grade book and attendance behavior. But yes, we are currently working. Actually, Dr. Henrik and I are meeting with some members of the team later this week to make sure that we've kind of done one more pass over it. Thank you.
Mr. Cole, sorry, one more.
Go ahead.
Out of the blue, just thought of it. You talked to them about the best possible price, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Any trial period? We'll try out for 4 years for.
So,
I
did try
full
that.
Monty price after 4.
Yeah, I did try that. What the reality is, the integration lift is so significant with a product like this. They've given us full access. We've had full access to their walled garden, their dummy account to play with this entire time. But once they start actually integrating, they have to dedicate significant staffing to integrating everything. So yeah, but we did get a very fair price, particularly knowing the Cadillac package that we got. I mean, we got a discount of about, don't hold me to it, but about $6,000 per year discounted off of their kind of their sticker price. So
Thank you.
yep.
Thanks, Mr.
It works out to about $43,000 a year over the, if you.
No, the discount, you said.
Oh, about $6,000 a year. give or take.
6,000.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Cole? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is budget update from Mr. McGuinn.
Last but not least, I will say my proposal is not as snazzy as Mr. Cole's. It's not as exotic as our Spanish teacher's presentation, certainly not as exciting as Adona's, and not as comprehensive as Dr. Henrik's. I had a lot of time to come up with that, so. Just as we've done each year, we're going to give a budget update each month to show where we have been and where we're going. Oops. So just a quick reminder of the process. We're in the January through May timeframe. That is where we are doing some budget revisions. So let's talk about some expenditure adjustments. Working through our custodial unions agreement, which is actually on our school board for approval tonight. We had some healthcare adjustments. They are in their own healthcare plan, so we were able to save some money there. Mr. Dominic had refined his budget based on what the Suburban League came up with new officials fees. We've made the change from the IST dean position at Pine Road to the assistant principal, and we actually had a little bit of a reduction in our second look healthcare renewal. Ended up to be about 1% discount. 1% difference between, or reduction between first look and second look. So overall expenditure adjustments, a little over $22,000 of reductions. Revenue adjustments, I've loaded in number 3 and number 4 for the simple fact that they are so low, I can't imagine they're not going to go with Governor Shapiro's 25-26 budget. A basic subsidy increase, a special education subsidy increase. And as part of Governor Shapiro's budget address this year, he has taken out what he put in for 24-25, which was cyber charter school reduction monies. revenue flowing from the state to school districts. We had assumed conservatively $20,000 that we thought was going to be included for 25, 26. That line item has been zeroed out. Governor Shapiro did call out in his budget, state budget, that he is looking for charter school reform. He's looking for a statewide tuition rate of $8,500 for regular education students. If that comes to fruition for a district as small as us, that would be about $130,000 worth of savings. We're certainly not banking on that. We're not including that in the budget, but I have a feeling that's going to be a discussion along with vouchers. That'll be part of the budget negotiations as we move forward. So here's where we are. We had a net change of about $145,000. Down below is our allowable tax increase at Act 1, which is 4%. We had the proposed referendum exception, which we applied for. We're waiting for final approval from the state in the amount of $933,000 and the amount that we're still short. We're okay, please, as I said in our preliminary. Why? Let's talk again about our budget strategies. They're all the same. We haven't made any changes. We haven't made any adjustments for earned income tax, transfer taxes, interest earnings. We're refining those numbers as we're going through, tracking them versus previous years. We'll probably be making some adjustments in the next month or two. And again, we have a keen eye on our Philmont over 55 development. Our over 55 development, we had, as of when I did this presentation, 3 properties sold. It's now 4, and the 4th one is again over $1 million. The assessment increase on 3 of the 4 is around that 286 number, which is what the assessor had indicated was going to be the case. He believed that a lot of those units will be assessed around the same thing. I don't know why number 2 is number 2. I have no idea why that number is so low on the early numbers, and that assessment number has not been addressed yet. And those updates just came in on Monday. So again, we'll receive transfer taxes, 0.5% on all sales, and then the assessments will increase. So what can we do? We will continue, in yellow, to monitor the sales and assessments. I will tell you, 175 properties are not going to be sold by July 1, period. So we're going to have to make some conservative assumptions. We will probably be assuming an increase in transfer taxes. Again, I assumed here for this analysis $750,000 for a sales price. What if now 3 of the 4 sold for a heck of a lot more than that? So a little bit more in transfer taxes most likely will be coming here. Interim taxes will be addressed. Properties that sell in August, September, they'll owe 11 months or 10 months or 9 months of taxes. So we'll address that line item. Those will be one-time numbers that will be reduced, and the following year will be replaced by the increased assessment that will be a true number moving forward. So it's kind of a seesaw. You're going to get the number at some point between interim and transfer, and then the following year, that total assessment number will be coming up. We certainly have the ability to take a little bit more out of fund balance. We're trying very hard to hold those numbers. We want to address the structural deficit that we've been working with, and if we can bring those fund balance numbers down even further, that would be tremendous. I can tell you that some of the things that I've looked at over the last couple days will net us almost another $150,000 of savings, one of which I need to talk to Mr. Giordano tomorrow, as was an email that we received from one of our out-of-district placements, where our student is doing so well that the school was able to remove that student's one-to-one aid. so then we can see a reduction in out-of-school tuition. So kudos to the out-of-district placement and Mr. Giordano for placing that student in a place where that student can succeed, and then we'll look to adjust those budgets as we come. Again, our next steps will continue to refine. We'll bring the proposed final in April, and then in June, we will seek the final. And as you recall, one of our strategies will be, we're going to try to get a balanced budget, or what we believe is a balanced budget, and then offer the school board options for what we've talked about with the capital projects transfer. We've talked about that multiple times. So I'm going to dovetail real quickly into two updates, which I spoke of, or I wrote in the board report to the board last Friday. We met with Senator Collette and Representative Genst, a very positive meeting. We talked about our PICO issue and our PICO increased issue on the paving. They have indicated that they will work with us. They suggested, as opposed to going to the state for a reimbursement type of grant opportunity, that it would be better to utilize that number in something that's upcoming. So they asked if we had any projects upcoming. We spoke of the 4 projects which we have the authorization to proceed with ICS, and they said that would fit perfect. Good news, more bad news than good news, but good news and bad news at the same time. Mr. Lynch was in that meeting for support and indicated that on his drive down, he was informed that as part of the final closeout for the high school project was a township requirement to video the sanitary line. And when they videoed the sanitary line, there was a dip in the sanitary line. So we are still investigating investigating the length. Mr. Lynch thinks it's about 20 feet under a sidewalk, of course. And there's no real, he said, she said, because it's been such a long project. The pipe went in, it was fine. Now it's not. It needs to be addressed. It's not imminent. We can still operate. We have been operating with that sanitary line. It's a township requirement that we get it addressed. Because the legislators were in that meeting, there are, similar to what we've done before, water and sewer grant opportunities. They said ideally, if it's under 100,000, they could find that niche. And again, because we haven't done the work yet, we can apply for the grant and then apply those funds for that. So shout out to Representative Genst and Senator Collette for being extremely collaborative. They had a wonderful meeting. Senator Collette talked about the difficulties of having students in a middle school right now. Her own children are in middle school, and I said, well, that's usually where all my bus problems are with our middle school students. Our elementary students are just so excited to be at school, and our high school students are half asleep going to and from school. So I gave a lot of updates on both our budget for next year and our ongoing problems under the ground for the high school project. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
How did this sanitary issue come to light?
It came to light as requirement from the township is to video the actual line. So they had a video go through, and as they're watching the video, they could see that there was a dip in the line that needed to be addressed.
So it was inspected when we did it?
Yes, when the pipe went in, it was fine. So what in theory has happened is contractors' equipment have been on top of the area or around that area. There's been, PennDOT stuff out there. There's been PICO stuff out there. At some points, something failed. Again, it's not a complete failure. We're still able to operate the school effectively, but it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be done for long term. And if we can get reimbursement, again, that would be wonderful. And I do remember a long time ago saying that a project of this nature typically some of your unforeseen expenditures are what's under the ground. I was wrong. I thought we were going to hit rock. I was completely wrong. We just hit a lot of other stuff under the ground, so.
So, Mark, the numbers you have today showing the $600,000 shortfall.
Yes.
That already includes those $200,000 and $400,000 from Peace's
Yes.
fund balance and healthcare. So, and you're also saying we could do
Yes.
more.
Ideally, if I could find 600,000, even more dollars from the, and not use that fund balance,
Right.
I would love not to use that fund balance.
That's the goal.
That is my goal.
Yep.
I would feel more comfortable utilizing fund balance for the retirement rate because that's pretty much stabilized. Again, when you're utilizing fund balance, you're taking money out of your savings account and utilizing it to balance your budget. You don't want to keep going to that well as much as possible. But we're trying to obviously certainly address the needs of the district while absolutely being cognizant of our taxpayers. We know that it's a difficult time. We know that there's a lot of unknowns all around. And we're just trying to be as prudent as possible and setting the district up for success in the future. Again, the over 55 development will certainly bring in a lot more tax revenue with no students. And as we've talked about in other, in board reports, we have the continuation of the self-storage facility, that assessment going up over the next 4 years in that graduated LERTA-type arrangement, as well as the assisted living Crescent Fields across from Wawa. That will really bump up, and that will become our #1 tax parcel in the district when it comes in. And again, that's a little bit of different of phase-in for the assessments, but those are built-in numbers that'll help our overall tax base.
Right. But they're not projected to help in 25, 26.
The self-storage, 300,000, right now, their assessment is increasing $300,000 per year.
Okay.
That number's already built into my number. It becomes effective May 1st.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Did you say that Crescent Fields will be the biggest tax parcel in the township, bigger than the over 55?
Yep. Well, sorry. If you take the over 55s individually, no. If you take the over 55s collectively, yeah, that's
Okay,
two different. As a single, so one of the
Because they don't
things-
pay it as one, they pay, everybody
Correct.
pays their own, right?
Correct.
Right.
And honestly, I'm not sure down the road if and when the BET investment property goes, that'll also be a big taxpayer, and that will be one entity. One of the things that we have to do, and a little preview of next week's school board report, we have an S&P rating call on Monday. Dr. Best is going to be sitting in my office, and he'll probably be nodding off because it's just droll. I even nod off half the time. But one of the things they ask about is your top 10 taxpayers. So the Crescent Fields, when their assessment is complete after they graduate, will be about $14 million in assessment. Our next highest number is about $4 million. It used to be Philmont Country Club, but obviously now they've split and gone. So, but your individual numbers in the over 55 will be smaller, but collectively, yes, they'll be very big.
Do you foresee, I mean, I think that's a low number for the 1.1 million sale price, but I got to believe they're going to be pretty consistent, right? I mean,
well,
whether they sell, what they sell for is different than, should be different than the assessment.
Once again, in a preview of this week's board report, in my conversation with Mr. Hoffman for a township update, they have given approval to go, instead of 32 feet wide units, to 28 feet wide units. So I think some of those prices will vary. The sign reads now from the upper 600s, so I think you'll have a mix. I think, you know, your bare bones might be an upper 600 or whatever that number was here.
670, yeah.
But if you want any amenities, I think it'll grow.
A lot of that has to do with the parcel location, right? There's premier, you pay for.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's
placement.
interesting, if you've seen them going up, they're mostly 4-unit plots, but there's actually 6 2-unit plots, and one of the 2-unit plots along Pine Road is being brought up now. So it's an interesting mix that they have there. So, and I'll be curious to see what type and how the sales go for the ones above the, on top of the hill, closer to Pine Road, closer to the back of that property.
Closer to the golf course, I guess.
Yes, closer to the golf course.
What was the phase-in timeframe for Crescent Fields?
So it was, as opposed to the self-storage, it was on one of my board reports. Off the top of my head, I don't recall, but it was, I believe, no increase for 7 years and then a 3-year, see it, don't I? A 3-year phase-in versus the self-storage, which was no increase for 5 years and then a 5-year. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and look to confirm, and I'll certainly get that information to you.
Thank you. They opened last year, correct?
They opened,
2 years ago.
might have been even 2 years ago. So they're exempt for a certain amount of years. And again, that was part of the local economic development zone that property was built in. So they had various types of tax phase-in. So the assessment remains the same for that property as it was, and gives a little bit of relief until a certain time where then the assessment increases, it goes up to where it's going, scheduled to be. And that's all done by the county level. We have that documentation of when it's supposed to happen, so that we'll coordinate, if it doesn't happen, with the township and our county reps to make sure that that assessment goes up. So, and again, for the self-storage, it's every May 1st until it gets up to its full assessment.
Do we know already if the BET property, it has the same sort of LRPA
It does not.
accommodation?
It is not in the, it's not in the LRTA zone. The LRTA zone is pretty much from between Red Lion and Huntington Pike.
Okay. Thank you for all your work on this. I just have a sort of speculative question, I guess. But as you prepared this budget, do you also kind of forecast what the next couple years will look? Yes, okay.
Yeah, we've done that as part of Mr. Sultanic. He had asked for that kind of stuff. So a lot of it is dependent upon agreements, which obviously we have one that's still in flux right now. When we do our budget, and I think we did the analysis this year, almost 92% of our budget is fixed. And as part of that fixed cost is that big number for our teachers. So while you can project as much as you want, until we have that agreement locked in, it's always a little bit of guessing on what the final number is going to be.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With regards to the Philmont property, were we given projections as to, from the developer's point of view, how quickly the units would be sold, and do we know if they're meeting those projections?
I asked that of Mr. Hoffman. He's pretty confident that they are meeting their expectations. The economy is definitely playing a part. Mortgage rates are playing a part of it as well. But honestly, when you drive in there, which I've done usually once a week, there's a lot of red sold signs. There's a lot of red sold signs on plots where there's been nothing coming up from the ground already. So I think it's in line with what they were preparing. Again, the start date for the units starting to come online matched exactly what Mr. Hoffman was saying, which was early calendar year 2025. And I believe it'll be all this calendar year 2025, and then it'll probably be a little bit into early 2026. But I think it should be fully, if I'm standing at this microphone in July of 2026, which I'd just be a guest at that point, don't want to be here. I would theorize that it would almost be 100% sold, unless there's something, COVID-19 hits again. Well, no one could have, who would have ever thought COVID-19, but now, yeah, it was unthinkable. And honestly, we got through it, right?
Any other questions?
I'm going to drop my mic. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that'll move us to our personnel section of the agenda. Dr. Press will be filling in for Ms. Geller.
Yes, so on tonight's agenda, item A, we have a few personnel motions. We have a handful of leaves. I remind the board members that in the executive content area, you're able to see the particular information rather than the generic information listed on the public-facing document. In item B, we have one non-athletic extracurricular contract that's for the memory book that we did the MOU for Murray Avenue. The memory book is the yearbook for the school. And then finally, we have two softball contracts for varsity assistant and JV girls heading for approval at the next meeting.
Thanks. Any comments or questions for these items, A through C? Great, thank you, Dr. Best. We'll move to agenda item 5, teaching, learning, and community engagement. Mr. Cole.
Yeah, so we do have a handful of professional meetings this month. Mr. Moxie is attending the College Board English Language and Composition Training. Our speech team is attending the IDEA and Rethinking Eligibility for Speech and Language Impairment at Patan. That's a virtual conference. One of our science teachers at the high school will be attending the National Conference on Science Education, and two of our ELD teachers will be attending a full-day session at the IU on building ELD synergy. I will also be attending that with them as part of my Job Alike group. So that's a nice session that's designed to integrate ELA instruction for ELD learners.
Thanks. Any comments and questions? Great. Could you take us to item B of the PLP Professional Services Agreement?
So I will be sending you some research that I've been doing as we're sitting here that's the highlight or the early look at my board report for this week. But this is actually an agreement that we're proposing to do with Professional Learning Partnerships. Julia Skolnick does some really amazing work on brain science and how it impacts teaching and learning. And so it will be 3 parts. One is to continue the think tank work that our high school teachers and administrators are doing, potentially with some student involvement. The second part will be, much like teachers, administrators need to be developed as well. So with bringing on some new administrators this year and potentially for next year, we would like to spend time building the capacity of our administrative team, because then they turn around and train our teachers with that brain science and leadership. The third part will be participation in an Innovation Summit series in the summer, which we're really excited about, because that gives our teachers the opportunity to be highlighted for the great work that they're doing. I think that we are primed to show other people what great work we're doing, and for our teachers to have that experience and that recognition. And then the final part is, a small fee to have access to the digital library and consultation for areas of need related to brain science and teaching and learning. If anyone has questions.
A general question. I mean, if there are students who are interested in pursuing teaching as a career, do they have access, or could they have access to some of these resources and professional development things that the staff gets exposure to?
I think that's something that we could look into. I mean, usually professional development is when students aren't in the building, but I will say that when we talk to the high school think tank team, we can certainly see where that might be appropriate to fit.
Yeah, I think some of the brain science work, I think, would be fascinating for some students, maybe if they're interested in things like that.
Yes, and we do want to include students in our think tank next year, and so maybe I like your idea. Maybe that helps us to determine who do we invite based on their interest, right? Not just people who want to be teachers, but maybe people who are in an anatomy class or want to dig deeper into that brain science as well. I like that. Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Dr. Hendrick, is professional learning partnerships, is this the first year we're considering a contract with
It's a
them?
good question. We actually are doing a very small piece with them just in our high school this year. We have a think tank going. Actually, that's where a lot of the work with cell phones has come from. So
Okay.
we started a smaller piece with them this year. This would be an extension and an increase in that.
Right. Are they going to replace other services we're using now? Like, for example, the professional development, things like that. Are they going to replace any past contractors that we had?
You know what? I'm not sure who we've used prior to this year. I will find out.
Okay. I mean, just overall, bottom line, looking at the price tag, I'm wondering
Correct.
if this is going to be brand
Ongoing.
new,
Mhm.
all in, or is this going to
This
be
will-
netted with something we're already spending?
So that's a good question. This will be brand new for our administrators, and it will be a continuation for our high school teachers. I do think that the work that we've done so far at the high school has had really nice results. I don't think we'll be doing it forever and ever and ever, but I think that if we grow our teams, then we retain our teams and we positively impact kids. And that level of expertise, sometimes we have to learn from other people and then turn around and train our staff with it. But I do hear what you're
Yeah.
saying.
No, it's definitely important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. That'll take us to item C and D, Mr. Cole, for Panorama and eSchool Plus.
Yep, yeah, so these two agreements are related. So the first one is the Panorama Education Partnership. So this is just I know that sounds dismissive, but this is the agreement that's coupled with the presentation that I gave earlier. So this is the actual contract. So included within this cost is a needs assessment that we've already started doing some work with Panorama around that, and then we will work in unison to design and implement the data warehouse. That includes they will do the data migration, any data cleaning and transformation that's needed. So if we have data in one format that needs to be included into another, they'll support that. And then the development of reports and dashboards. So one of the things that's nice is they have a kind of a baked-in model, but we get to play around with some calibration and set parameters for what we consider student success and what we consider something we want to keep an eye on. So that includes all of that customization. And then again, a really comprehensive training model. So this is just the agreement that captures that presentation from earlier.
Mr. Cole, has our incoming Director of Technology been made aware of these incoming projects?
Yeah, we've kept him abreast of what's going on to the extent that we can, recognizing he's still working.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Are we billed the total amount?
No, we will not. It's an annual.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we had the entirety of the agreement transparently.
I mean,
Thank you for that question, Mrs. Bland.
Yes.
in line with Dr. Lee's question, do you think that it's important that we have full, buy-in from the new Director of Technology prior to us approving this? And, because I feel like the timing maybe doesn't overlap perfectly.
No, the timing doesn't overlap perfectly, but this is a teaching and learning initiative. It's less of a technology piece. The person who will be supporting this most from the tech end will be our PIMS coordinator. So it's something that Mr. Patel is aware that we're doing. He's supportive of, but it's not necessarily something that will come from tech.
Okay, thank you.
Can I bring something up? I guess maybe this is the place to bring it up, but I haven't seen, do we still use Name Coach? I haven't seen a report on that.
We do not. We discontinued that for this year.
Oh, okay. Did I miss that? Was that reported? Or I feel like
Dr. Hilt had reported that earlier in the year. There was low usage for it, and there were other workarounds on how to have the name read in the email through Google that we provided people with.
Thank you.
Any other questions for item C or D? Did we do D?
No, so
No,
D's
sorry.
next. So D is, and Ms. Blanton, I think to speak to the tech integration piece, I think this kind of agreement speaks to that as well. No, you're okay. So what this is, so I alluded to it earlier that every network or every product that we interface with natively ties to Panorama. The one exception was eSchool. So eSchool did not natively speak to Panorama. That has, full transparency, been an issue with our current partner as well, has been our integration of eSchool into their system. What we were able to do, and both eSchool, owned by PowerSchool, and Panorama have been wonderful about collaborating together with our PIMS administrator on finding a solution to that. So this one-time bill is to build the secure file transfer protocol that will allow for that upload to occur automatically and regularly between eSchool and Panorama. So currently, our solution has been manually creating reports that are then shared with our current data warehouse partner, a huge human resource cost that's maybe not captured in a bill, but is definitely a significant impact on our PIMS administrator. So this will allow for that process to be automated. It is a one-time cost. It is something that would have to happen with any data warehouse that we wanted to go with in order for it to be something that happened automatically. So this covers the 24 hours of work that it will take to launch. Panorama is aware of this work. Their tech team worked very closely through our PIMS administrator with the eSchool team to make sure that the language spoke correctly. And so we're confident that this will get it done. We're also very pleased with the timeline, and Panorama is aware of the timeline and is confident that they'll be able to kind of do some back-end work with a few manual uploads in the interim until this gets up and running. But within a few weeks, we should be good to go.
So the summary notes that any changes to the files will be addressed via additional consulting hours billed at the then current rate. So does that have to do with registration? Like if students?
No. So that would be if we would then say, we want some adjustments made to this file at a later date. So if we create this protocol, we create the transfer, everything's good, we're happy with it, and then we say, oh, well, we want to change X, Y, or Z, there would be some additional billing for that.
In effect, like new student registration?
No. This is not an ongoing annual. This is a one-time with the asterisk that it will work exactly as designed in perpetuity unless we make any changes.
Any other questions for Mr. Cole? Great, thank you. That'll take us to item 6, buildings and grounds. Mr. McGuinn, applications for use.
Yes, we have 5 requests to use our facilities. The first is a travel baseball team, actually coached by our food service director. He's taken the initiative to coordinate with HVAA on use of the fields. He's provided us with proper insurance, and we're assigning him the same kind of rates that we've done for other entities that use our track, which we'll see later, of $600. That's something that we are recommending use for. We have classes of 1975. On a Saturday, they'd like to take a tour of the new high school, and on a Sunday, they'd like to go back to their old high school for lunch. We've assigned no fee to that. We had done this before for their 45th reunion. So we're going to continue that process and welcome classmates from 1975 back into the district. St. Albert the Great is requesting use of the track. It's been reviewed by our athletic director and building principal, and we're okay with that. And again, assessing a fee of $600. And then HVAA is coordinating with HVAA basketball to utilize the gym facilities for futsal, which is somewhat like indoor soccer, but with a much heavier ball, much less chance for any damage. And it's something that we would support for your approval.
I have a question. Mark, the only question I had with this new baseball team was it's a lot of time, and it's also during the high school varsity and junior varsity baseball season, Monday, Thursday.
Yeah, they work around both our own team's schedules as well as HVAA. This has been coordinated through Mr. Dominic, who has signed off on this as well.
Okay. So they don't have priority, for example, if there's a, Wednesday game, rains out, but they play it Thursday.
The school district always has priority,
Okay.
even over HVAA,
All
yes.
right. That was my only question. Thank you.
I know we had voted to raise the fee. Was that just for HVAA or was?
No, it was for, and this will be for 25, 26, for all of our continuing use organizations. So it's HVAA.
It just didn't take effect yet?
Not effect yet, so
Okay.
next year. So HVAA, Lower Moreland Swim and Dive, and the German school. Those three entities the fee will go from $7,500 to $10,000.
I guess I would ask a little bit more about the maintenance fee of $600, or I guess, is there a graduated difference between maintaining a track use versus the baseball field?
Typically not, as long as the folks who utilize our baseball fields utilize it correctly. I can tell you anecdotally over the years, a while ago, we had some issues with HVAA who would like to get onto the fields almost immediately after it rained and would sweep the puddles out, which would take the infield mix out, which is a big no-no. We're pretty confident, A, that we've addressed a lot of those field issues, and B, that these organizations know that school district comes first, so the fields have to be ready for our use. And they, especially travel baseball, in this case, they know the value of keeping your field up to speed and keep it in high quality, because obviously they would want to come back if they're having a good experience there.
All right, thank you. Great. I'll take us to item 7, business and finance, accounts payable checklist. Mr.
Yes, we have the AP checklist dated 2/25 and the amount shown, if anyone has any questions.
If no questions, we'll move on to agenda item 10, school board items. First item is the 2025, and that should be a typo to 2026. That's corrected to school board meeting dates. Any comments or questions? If not, we'll move on to items B and C. These are overnight trips for track and swimming. One, I believe, one is retroactive and one will be taking place before the next legislative meeting. Any comments or questions? Item D is the study abroad trip to Spain, which will be up for vote at next session. Any comments or questions on the proposal? Okay, that'll take us to item E, which is the SEI union contract for 2025 through 2028. Are there comments or questions on the agreement?
Dr. Lee, if you'd like, I'd
Yes, please.
give a little summary of that. Mrs. Galdo and I met with representatives from SEIU and our local shop steward. Went through, there's about 5 items on the contract, one of which we agreed to, which was the call-in pay, moving from 2 hours to 3 hours. And we also upped their work shoe allocation as per their request. We also included a holiday, which we have on our own calendar to be included in their contract. Their proposed increase matched what we were projecting. We had a little bit of negotiation on what was considered base versus merit, and they agreed to our terms. So overall, this was a very positive outcome and a positive negotiation, and took place over the course of 1/2 hour. So we were very pleased. There will be an upcoming MOU that's coming after we get this contract approved, where they're asking for, in lieu of paying healthcare premiums, because their health fund is doing so well, they would like that in compensation, which for us is not a big deal. It's paying different dollars going different places, but that'll be, we plan to do, propose one for next fiscal year and the 26-27 school year. But that'll be a separate agreement that's not included in this agreement.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions for Mr. Nguyen? Okay, that'll take us to items F through L, which are second readings of revised policies as listed. As always, accompanying our cover memos, nicely summarizing as well as highlighting the changes. Bless you. Any comments or questions from the board on these several second readings of policies? Okay, if not, that'll take us to any public comment tonight.
Nobody has signed up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there are no objections, I will move to adjourn into our next meeting on March 18th, 2025 at 7 p.m. As there are no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.